The sanctuary fell deathly quiet as shocked gasps echoed through the crowd. Ebony Matthews stood at the altar in her cream-colored wedding dress, the satin hugging every curve of her plus-sized frame, her brown skin radiant against the delicate beading. Her fiancé Derek had just turned away from her, his voice carrying through the church with devastating clarity. "I'm sorry, I can't marry her. Not like this. I thought things would be different by now." The congregation erupted in whispers. Ebony's fingers trembled around her bouquet, hot tears threatening to spill, shame washing over her like a tidal wave. She wanted to vanish, to run, to wake from this living nightmare. Then a voice sliced through the commotion, deep, accented, commanding. "I'll marry her." Every eye turned. A man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit stood at the back of the church, his Korean features striking and composed, dark eyes locked on Ebony with an intensity that stole her breath. Peak Jiwon, the most dangerous name whispered in Chicago's underworld, strode down the aisle with the confidence of someone who owned the very ground beneath his feet. "I'll take her as my wife," he stated again, never breaking eye contact with Ebony's stunned face, "right here, right now." Before we dive in, beautiful people, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. It's the best way you can support us as we continue delivering captivating stories that'll keep you hooked every single day. 3 months before that moment, Ebony Matthews had been wiping down the marble counter at Enchanted Moments, the exclusive wedding planning firm where she worked as a coordination assistant. Her natural curls were styled in a professional updo, her full figure draped in a navy sheath dress she'd chosen specifically for its business-appropriate cut. At 29, she learned to navigate spaces designed for women's society deemed more acceptable, despite the quiet judgments that followed her everywhere. "Ebony, handle the park consultation for me," her supervisor Monica announced without glancing up from her laptop. 2:30 appointment. Very high-end client, extremely particular about details. "Don't let me down." Ebony swallowed the retort rising in her throat. She never let anyone down. She was the one who salvaged disasters, who remembered every tiny detail, who worked 3 times as hard for a fraction of the credit. "Absolutely, I'll prepare immediately." The park file was oddly minimal. Corporate function, unlimited budget, client demands complete confidentiality. Ebony frowned at the sparse information, but prepared the consultation room with her trademark precision. Fresh orchids positioned perfectly, crystal water pitchers arranged just so, lighting adjusted to create warmth without darkness. At 2:28, the entrance doors swept open. Ebony glanced up from her tablet and felt her pulse stutter. The man who walked in commanded every bit of space around him. Korean, probably mid-30s, with angular cheekbones and obsidian eyes that seemed to assess everything instantly. His charcoal suit was custom-made, likely more expensive than her car payment. 3 men in matching attire flanked him, their bearing screaming professional security. "Mr. Park," Ebony approached with her professional smile, offering her hand. "I'm Ebony Matthews. I'll be handling your event consultation." His gaze swept over her deliberately, not lewdly, but with a thoroughness that made her skin warm. When his hand enveloped hers, his grip was solid, warm. "Actually," he said, his accent subtle, "it's PJ. Peak Jiwon." The park was just for the appointment. Something in his delivery made Ebony's street-smart instincts tingle with caution. She'd grown up on Chicago's West Side, in blocks where reading danger was essential survival. This man was dangerous, but her rent didn't care about her gut feelings. "Mr. Peak," she corrected smoothly, "please follow me to the consultation room." "May I offer you something? Water, coffee, perhaps tea?" Water would be appropriate. He followed her, his security detail remaining in the lobby. Once the door clicked shut, his entire presence shifted, relaxing by degrees. "You're questioning why someone in my position needs a wedding coordinator," Peak stated without preamble. Ebony settled across from him, maintaining professional composure. "I'm here to provide whatever services you require, Mr. Peak. Your motivations are yours alone." A slight smile ghosted across his mouth. Tactful. "I value that." He leaned back, studying her with those penetrating eyes. "I require wedding planning services, but not for an authentic union. Ebony's pen hovered over her notepad. I'm afraid I don't follow. A strategic arrangement, he clarified. It must appear completely legitimate. Location, decorations, guests, every element flawless. But the couple involved won't have genuine emotional investment in the marriage. This wasn't the most unusual request Ebony had encountered in the wedding industry, but it ranked high. Mr. Peak, I should mention that Enchanted Moments maintains certain ethical standards. I'll compensate you triple your premium package, he interrupted, along with a substantial personal fee for you. 6 figures. Ebony's heart stumbled. 6 figures meant her student debt erased, her mother's mounting medical expenses covered, security she'd never experienced. But her mother had instilled values that didn't compromise easily. Why choose me? She asked instead of immediately agreeing. Because you look at me as a human being, not a monster, Peak said quietly, and because you need the financial relief enough to consider this, yet you possess enough integrity to pause. That combination is remarkably rare. Ebony held his gaze directly. Years of being a plus-sized black woman in spaces that often rendered her invisible had taught her to recognize genuine recognition. This man truly saw her, which felt both unsettling and strangely intoxicating. I'll need complete transparency, she said finally, absolute clarity about what I'm involving myself in. Peak's smile widened, revealing perfect teeth. You're involving yourself in a business consolidation. 2 entities merging. The wedding serves as symbolic confirmation, a public alliance declaration. Nothing unlawful will occur at the event itself. The careful wording told Ebony everything he avoided saying. Entities, alliance, the expensive suits and security suddenly crystallized perfectly. She was sitting opposite a criminal, probably an extremely powerful one. I need 24 hours for consideration, Ebony said, rising. Her hands remained steady, her voice calm, though her mind raced. Peak stood as well, extracting a card from his jacket's interior pocket. 24 hours. Contact this number. He paused at the threshold, turning back. Miss Matthews, I meant my earlier words. You're different from others. That's precisely why I selected this company after observing you managing the Foundation Gala last month. He'd been watching her. The realization should have terrified Ebony, yet instead it sent an odd thrill down her spine. You attended that gala? I'm constantly observing, Miss Matthews. It's essential for survival. With that disturbing statement, Peak Jaiwan departed, his security team falling into formation like satellites orbiting a dark sun. Ebony sank back into her chair, legs suddenly unsteady. She examined the card in her hand, heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, 1 phone number. No name, no company identification. She should discard it immediately. She should report this to authorities. Instead, she slipped it into her purse, already certain of her answer. That evening, Ebony's phone buzzed while she stirred a pot of her mother's signature red beans and rice. The caller ID displayed her fiancé Derek. She smiled, answering on speaker. Hey love, you coming by for dinner? Can't tonight, babe. Swamped at the office again. This management position is brutal. Ebony frowned at the simmering pot, something in his tone striking her as evasive. Derek, you've stayed late every single night this week. Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong, just pressure. Listen, I've gotta run. Love you. He disconnected before she could respond. Ebony stared at her phone, unease settling in her stomach. Derek had grown distant recently, their wedding arrangements, which she financed alone despite his assurances, seeming more like obligations he tolerated than a future he anticipated. When she glanced down at herself, at her thick thighs and rounded stomach, she felt the familiar whisper of inadequacy. Was she excessive? Insufficient? Both? Her phone chimed with a text from Derek. By the way, maybe restart that eating plan? Wedding's 3 months out. The message landed like a slap. Ebony deleted it, jaw clenched, blinking away tears that felt like equal parts pain and rage. She retrieved Peak's card from her purse, staring at it for a long moment, then made the call. The address Peak's associate provided directed Ebony to a restaurant in Chicago's Koreatown district she'd never visited. The exterior was understated, but stepping inside, She immediately understood this was no ordinary establishment. The hostess recognized Peek's name instantly, guiding her through the main dining area to a secluded section in back. Peek rose when she entered, gesturing to the opposite seat. I took the liberty of ordering in advance. Have you experienced Korean cuisine before? A few times, Ebony admitted, settling into her chair. The rich aromas made her stomach growl despite her nerves, though nothing that smells this incredible. This is galbi, kimchi, japchae, and bibimbap, Peek explained, indicating each dish. Please enjoy. We can address business afterward. Ebony hesitated, then served herself. The first bite of galbi dissolved on her tongue, the flavors layered and perfectly executed. She couldn't suppress a small sound of pleasure. Peek watched her with something resembling satisfaction. You're not among those women who pretend they don't eat. I stopped pretending to be something I'm not years ago, Ebony said, meeting his gaze. Life's too precious to starve yourself for people who won't appreciate you regardless. Wise philosophy. Peek added more kimchi to her plate. Your fiancé, does he appreciate you? The question was invasive, yet Ebony found herself responding honestly. He wants me to lose weight before our wedding, sends me meal plan suggestions, mentions my body size around his friends like it's some shared joke. She paused, surprised by her own candor. I'm not sure why I'm sharing this. Because I asked, and because you know I won't judge you, Peek's expression remained unreadable. He's foolish. Ebony's breath caught. You don't know me. I know you're exceptional at your profession. I know you work harder than anyone in that office. I know you carry yourself with dignity even when others dismiss you. Peek leaned forward slightly. And I know you deserve far better than a man who views you as a project requiring correction rather than a woman deserving celebration. The words sank into Ebony's chest, settling somewhere deep and painful. She blinked rapidly, refusing to cry before this dangerous stranger who somehow perceived her more clearly than the man she planned to marry. The wedding, she said, redirecting to safer territory. Tell me about it. Peek accepted the shift gracefully. The bride is a business associate's daughter. She's in love with someone else, someone deemed inappropriate. The groom is my cousin, equally disinterested. The marriage is purely tactical, merging territories, preventing potential conflict. Territories, Ebony repeated. You mean criminal territories? I mean business interests, Peek corrected, though his eyes acknowledged the truth. You'll receive substantial compensation and complete protection. No one will harm you while you're under my employ. And afterward, when the job concludes. Peek's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Afterward, you'll return to your life, with sufficient funds to leave your fiancé if you choose, to rebuild however you wish. The implication hung between them. Ebony sipped her water, her mind weighing risks against rewards. I'll do it, but with conditions. State them. Complete creative authority over the event. No interference with my vendor or design decisions. Second, I meet the bride and groom to understand their preferences. Third, complete honesty from you. If I'm facing danger, I deserve that knowledge. Peek considered her for an extended moment. Agreed, but I have one condition myself. What? You'll meet with me weekly to review progress. Here at this restaurant, just us. His gaze intensified. I want confirmation you're safe, that you're managing the pressure. Ebony's pulse quickened. This felt like more than business arrangements, but she couldn't afford acknowledging that. Fine, weekly meetings. They shook hands across the table, and Ebony felt the same jolt of awareness from their initial meeting. Peek's thumb brushed across her knuckles before releasing her, the contact deliberate. Over the following weeks, Ebony immersed herself in planning the wedding while managing her regular workload and evading Derek's increasingly critical comments about her appearance. The weekly meetings with PJ became the strangest part of her routine. He asked about her life, her aspirations, her mother's Creole recipes. He listened when she discussed growing up on the West Side, about her father who'd abandoned them when she was 8, about the literature she treasured. In return, he shared carefully measured pieces of himself. His family immigrated when he was 13. His father constructed an empire through methods both legitimate and illegal. When his father died, Peak inherited everything, including enemies who'd eliminate him given opportunity. You never wanted a conventional life? Ebony asked one evening, observing him across the table. Conventional is illusory, Peak replied. We all make choices based on the circumstances we're given. You could have become bitter, could have let the world's cruelty make you cruel, but you chose kindness, resilience. That's extraordinary. Ebony felt warmth rise to her cheeks. You make me sound heroic. I'm just trying to survive. Survival itself is heroic. Peak's phone vibrated and his expression hardened, reading the message. I need to handle something urgent. Let me have my driver take you home. I can take the train. Please. The single word carried weight. It's late, and I'd prefer knowing you arrived safely. Ebony wanted to protest, but the concern in his eyes stopped her. All right, thank you. The driver was a quiet man named Min, who navigated Chicago's streets with practiced expertise. As they approached Ebony's modest apartment building, she spotted Derek's car parked outside. Her stomach dropped. He rarely visited unannounced anymore. She found him waiting in the corridor, his expression turbulent. Where have you been? Working, Ebony said truthfully, an important client. Why are you here? Derek's eyes narrowed. Working this late, Ebony? I called your office. Monica said you left at 5:30. I had a client meeting. Derek, what's happening? What's happening is my fiancé is lying to me. He stepped closer and Ebony detected alcohol on his breath. Who is he? It's a client meeting. Derek's raised voice reverberated in the hallway. You think I'm stupid? You've been different recently, distant, and now you're dressing better, styling your hair differently. So I'm not allowed to take care of myself? Ebony's own temper ignited. You've been telling me to lose weight, to try harder, and when I actually start feeling confident about myself, you accuse me of infidelity? Because you are. Why else would someone like you suddenly have self-esteem? The words were designed to wound, and they succeeded. Ebony's voice went ice cold. Leave. Derek, leave. She pulled her engagement ring from her finger and placed it in his palm. We're finished. I'm done. Go. Derek stared at the ring, then at her, shock replacing anger. You're serious? Over one argument? Over 3 years of making me feel inadequate. Over every comment about my weight, every time you seemed embarrassed to be seen with me, every promise you broke about our wedding. Ebony's voice didn't waver. I'm worth more than settling for someone who views me as a burden. She went inside and locked the door, listening to Derek's footsteps finally retreat. Then she slid down the wall and allowed herself to cry, not for him, but for the years she'd wasted convincing herself she didn't deserve better. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Are you all right? Min mentioned someone was waiting for you. PJ. Ebony stared at the message, something warm unfurling in her chest. She typed back, I'm okay now. Thank you for checking. The response came immediately. Call if you need anything. I mean that sincerely. Ebony saved the number under Peak Jaiwin and fell asleep holding her phone, feeling for the first time in years that maybe she actually was worth more than she'd allowed herself to believe. The wedding planning consumed Ebony's existence over the next month. She met the bride Minji, a stunning Korean woman in her mid-20s with melancholy eyes and resignation that broke Ebony's heart. The groom Hyunwoo, Peak's cousin, was courteous but clearly indifferent to the entire affair. I appreciate what you're doing, Minji told Ebony during their venue tour, making it beautiful despite it being this. Every bride deserves a beautiful wedding, Ebony said gently, even when the circumstances aren't traditional. Minji's eyes filled with tears. There's someone else, someone I love, but my father would never approve. Ebony thought of Derek, of the relief she'd experienced after ending that relationship. Sometimes the people we love aren't the people we should be with. Have you ever been in love? Minji asked. I thought I was, Ebony admitted, but real love doesn't diminish you. It doesn't demand you change everything about yourself to be acceptable. The words echoed in her own mind during her next meeting with PJ. They sat in their usual private dining area, but the atmosphere felt charged with something unspoken. You ended your engagement, Peak said without preamble. Ebony met his gaze. How did you know? I pay attention. He poured her water, his movements deliberate. Was it because of our arrangement? It was because of me, Because I finally recognized I deserved more than how he treated me. She paused. But yes, these weeks working with you, being around someone who actually listens when I speak, who doesn't look at me like I'm something requiring repair, it helped me recognize the difference. Peek's expression softened in a way she'd never witnessed. He was foolish to lose you. He didn't lose me. I left him. The distinction mattered to Ebony. Even better. Peek leaned forward, his voice lowering. Ebony, I need to tell you something. The wedding, there's been a complication. Her pulse accelerated. What kind of complication? A rival organization isn't pleased about the alliance. They've made threats, vague but concerning. His jaw tightened. I'm increasing security at all venues, and I'm assigning personal protection to you. To me? Why would they care about me? Because they know you're important to me. The words hung in the air between them. Anyone can observe how much I value your professional expertise. But they both knew he meant something deeper. Ebony's heart hammered. Peek, this is just employment. After the wedding, you'll return to your life. I know. His hand moved across the table, stopping just before touching hers. But until then, you're under my protection. Non-negotiable. The protection detail turned out to be a composed woman named Soyeon, who shadowed Ebony everywhere like a well-dressed phantom. It was unsettling and strangely reassuring. Ebony found herself working late at the office one evening finalizing floral arrangements when Soyeon's phone buzzed. We need to leave, Soyeon said immediately, her demeanor shifting to high alert. Now. What's happening? Someone's been asking questions about you. At your apartment building, at your regular coffee shop. Soyeon was already guiding Ebony toward the rear exit. Mr. Peek wants you somewhere secure until we identify who's asking. Ebony found herself in the back seat of a luxury sedan, being driven through Chicago streets while Soyeon made rapid-fire calls in Korean. They arrived at a high-rise in the Gold Coast and Soyeon escorted her to a penthouse on the top floor. The door opened before they knocked. Peek stood there and relief flashed across his features so quickly Ebony almost missed it. You're safe. I'm confused, Ebony countered. What's happening? Peek dismissed Soyeon with a nod and drew Ebony inside. The penthouse was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, minimalist decor with Korean art pieces, everything expensive but understated. Someone's been tracking your movements, taking photographs. We're working to identify them. Photographs. Ebony's stomach dropped. Why? To use as leverage against me. Peek's voice was hard. They know you're working on the wedding. They may suspect you're more than that. But I'm not. Aren't you? Peek turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. Ebony, I know this began as a business arrangement, but these weeks, learning about you, witnessing your strength and brilliance, the way you navigate the world with grace despite everything trying to diminish you. He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. You've become important to me, more important than I intended. Ebony's mouth went dry. Peek, we can't. I know. Your life, my life, they don't align. After the wedding, you'll return to your world, and I'll remain in mine. He took a step closer. But right now, tonight, I need you to stay here where I know you're protected. Every rational thought told Ebony to refuse. But she looked at this dangerous, powerful man who somehow made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had, and she nodded. All right, just for tonight. Peek showed her to a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment. There's clothing in the closet that should fit. Bathroom through there. If you need anything at all, thank you, Ebony interrupted, for caring about my safety, even if it's just because I'm working for you. Peek's hand lifted as if to touch her face, then dropped. It's not just because you're working for me, Ebony. I think you understand that. He left before she could respond, and Ebony sat on the edge of the enormous bed, her heart racing. She was falling for him, for a man who lived in a world of violence and secrets, who could never offer her the conventional life she'd always imagined. But as she looked around the beautiful room, felt the echo of his concern and care, she wondered if conventional was even what she wanted anymore. Around 2 a.m, unable to sleep, Ebony wandered into the main living area. She found Peek standing at the windows, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the city lights. He turned when he heard her, his expression unguarded. Couldn't sleep? he asked. Too much racing through my mind. Ebony joined him at the window. Can I ask you something personal? Anything. Why did you really choose me for this job? The truth. Peak was quiet for a long moment. I observed you at that foundation gala. You were coordinating everything, resolving problems, ensuring everyone else's event was flawless. But I also witnessed how they treated you, your supervisor taking credit for your work, vendors dismissing you until you proved yourself, your fiancé barely acknowledging you when he arrived. His jaw clenched. And through it all, you remained gracious, professional. You didn't let their disrespect diminish you. That's strength, that's what drew me to you. So it was pity, Ebony said, hating the way her voice wavered. No. Peak set down his glass and turned to face her fully. It was recognition. I know what it's like to be underestimated, to have people see only what they want to see. You and I, we're both fighting to be seen for who we truly are. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hand. I see you, Ebony Matthews, all of you, and you're extraordinary. Ebony's breath caught as his thumb brushed across her cheek. She should step back. This was her employer, a criminal, someone from a completely different world. But his touch was gentle, reverent, and when she looked into his eyes, she saw herself reflected back, not as too much or not enough, but as exactly right. This is complicated, she whispered. Everything worth having is complicated. Peak's other hand found her waist, pulling her closer. Tell me to stop. Ebony knew she should. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. The kiss started gentle, tentative, both of them testing boundaries. Then Peak made a sound low in his throat and deepened it, his hand threading into her hair, his other arm wrapping around her to pull her against his body. Ebony melted into him, her hands gripping his shirt, feeling wanted in a way that had nothing to do with tolerating her and everything to do with desiring her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Peak rested his forehead against hers. I'm not good for you, my life is dangerous. Let me decide what's good for me, Ebony interrupted. I've spent too long letting other people make those decisions. Peak pulled her back into his arms, and they stood there by the windows as the city sparkled below them, both understanding that everything had changed, and neither willing to let go just yet. The weeks before the wedding blurred together in a haze of planning details and stolen moments. Ebony and Peak maintained professional boundaries in public, but in private they couldn't stay apart. Late-night dinners at the restaurant became discussions about everything and nothing, her love of Maya Angelou's poetry, his complicated relationship with his late father, her dreams of opening her own event-planning business, his hope that perhaps someday he could leave this life behind. But reality had a way of crashing back in. 3 days before the wedding, Ebony was at the office when Monica called her into a meeting. The expression on her supervisor's face sent warning bells ringing. Ebony, we need to discuss your client, Monica said, her voice tight. Mr. Peak, what about him? Monica slid a folder across the desk. Inside were newspaper clippings, surveillance photos, reports about organized crime in Chicago's Korean community. And there, in multiple images, was Peak Jaiwon. Do you understand who he really is? Ebony's blood ran cold. He's a businessman. He's a criminal, the head of one of Chicago's most dangerous organizations. Monica's eyes were hard. And you've been meeting with him alone multiple times weekly. Ebony, what were you thinking? I was thinking about doing my job, Ebony said, but her voice lacked conviction. Your job doesn't include becoming personally involved with clients, especially not clients like this. Monica pulled the folder back. I'm taking over the park wedding. You're removed from the account effective immediately. You can't do that. I can and I am. And Ebony, Monica's expression almost looked sympathetic. Whatever you think is happening between you and Peak Jaiwon, it's not real. Men like that don't end up with women like us. They use us and move on. The words hit like physical blows. Ebony left the office in a daze, her phone already ringing. Peak's name flashed on the screen. They removed you from the wedding, he said without greeting. I just heard. How did you already know? Ebony stopped herself. Of course he knew. He always knew. Monica says you're dangerous, that I'm just a distraction. I am dangerous, Peak said quietly. She's right about that. But you're not a distraction, Ebony. You're more than that. He paused. We need to talk in person. Can you come to the restaurant? Ebony should say no, should walk away from this whole complicated mess. But she found herself agreeing, found herself in the back of Min's car 20 minutes later, being driven to what had become her refuge. Peak was waiting in the private dining room, but his usual composure was fractured. They're not wrong to remove you from the wedding. I should have let them do it weeks ago. What are you saying? I'm saying that being near me puts you in danger, real danger. Those photos they took of you, they were from a rival organization. They wanted to know if you mattered to me. Peak's hands clenched into fists. And you do, more than anything, which makes you a target. Ebony's heart pounded. So what? We just stop? Pretend these weeks meant nothing? We stop before you get hurt, before someone uses you to get to me. Peak's voice was rough. I care about you too much to let that happen. That's not your choice to make. Ebony stood, anger flooding through her. I'm not some fragile thing needing protection. I grew up on the west side of Chicago. I know about danger. I know about risk. And I'm telling you that you're worth it. I'm not worth your life. My life? Ebony's voice broke. Going back to my tiny apartment, working for a supervisor who treats me like I'm invisible, settling for less than I deserve because that's what the world expects? You make me feel alive, Peak. You make me feel seen. And you're telling me to give that up out of fear? Peak crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. I'm telling you to give it up because I love you, and love means keeping you safe even if it means I lose you. The confession hung in the air between them. Ebony felt tears slide down her cheeks. You love me? From the moment I saw you managing chaos with grace at that gala, from every conversation where you challenged me to be better, from the way you kiss me like I'm worth saving. Peak's own eyes were bright. But my love isn't enough to change what I am, what my life is. Then change it, Ebony said desperately. Leave this life. Start over. We could together. It's not that simple. There are obligations, debts, people depending on me. I can't just walk away. Peak released her, stepping back. After the wedding, you're going to return to your life. You're going to start that business you dream about. And you're going to forget about the Korean gangster who was foolish enough to fall in love with you. I could never forget you. Ebony's voice was barely a whisper. You'll try because I'm asking you to. Peak pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is your payment, plus additional funds. Enough to start over, to build the life you deserve. Ebony stared at the envelope like it was poison. You're paying me off. That's what this is? I'm making sure you're taken care of. I don't want your money. Ebony shoved the envelope back at him. I want you. I want us. Can't you see that? I see it. Peak's voice cracked. But I also see reality. We're from different worlds. I can't give you the safe, normal life you deserve. I don't want safe and normal. I want real. I want honest. I want someone who sees me for who I am, not who they want me to be. Ebony reached for him, but he stepped away. The rejection stung worse than any words. I'm sorry, Ebony. I never should have let this start. I never should have been selfish enough to pursue you when I knew it couldn't last. Peak's expression was closed off now, the vulnerable man from moments ago locked away behind his professional mask. Min will take you home. Don't come to the wedding. It's better if we make a clean break. Peak, please. Goodbye, Ebony. He turned and walked out, leaving her standing alone in the room that had witnessed so many of their conversations, so many moments of connection. Ebony pressed her hand to her mouth to muffle the sob that escaped. Min appeared in the doorway, his expression sympathetic, and guided her to the car. She cried the entire ride home, mourning not just the loss of Peak, but the loss of the version of herself she'd discovered with him, the woman who believed she deserved extraordinary love. Her phone buzzed with a message. For a heartbeat, she hoped it was Peak changing his mind. Instead, it was from Derek. Heard about the breakup with your client. We could try again if you want. I miss you. Ebony deleted the message without responding. She might have lost Peak, but she hadn't lost herself. That was something. The day of the wedding arrived. Ebony tried not to think about it, tried to focus on sending out resumes and planning her new business. But at 1:30, the exact time the ceremony was supposed to start, she found herself getting dressed in the outfit she'd planned weeks ago, calling a car, and heading to the church. She slipped into the back just as the ceremony began. Minji looked beautiful but heartbroken in her wedding gown. Hyunwoo looked resigned. And at the front, standing as a witness, was Peak. He hadn't seen her enter. The minister began the ceremony. Ebony watched, her heart aching as the ritual progressed toward the inevitable conclusion. Until the minister asked the traditional question everyone expected to go unanswered. Does anyone have any reason why these two should not be wed? I do, said a voice from the side. A young man in a simple suit stood, his eyes on Minji. I love her and she loves me. Chaos erupted. Minji burst into tears. Her father shouted in Korean. Hyunwoo actually looked relieved. And through it all, Peak's gaze found Ebony in the back of the church. Their eyes locked and she saw everything he felt written on his face: love, regret, longing, despair. The ceremony dissolved. Guests whispered and pointed. Minji ran to the young man who'd spoken, and Ebony watched them embrace, watched her choose love over obligation. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, and everything she wanted for herself. She turned to leave, unable to watch anymore, when strong hands caught her arms. Peak had somehow crossed the church without her noticing. You came. I shouldn't have. Ebony tried to pull away, but he held firm. I'm glad you did. Peak's voice was rough. Because I need you to hear this. I was wrong. These past 3 days without you have been hell. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but really I was protecting myself from risk, from the possibility of failing you, from having to choose between my obligations and my heart. Ebony's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I choose you. I'm saying I'll find a way to leave this life, to build something new. I'm saying, Peak dropped to his knees right there in the church aisle. I'm saying I love you, Ebony Matthews, and if you'll have me, flawed and dangerous and complicated as I am, I will spend the rest of my life proving that you were worth every risk. Tears streamed down Ebony's face. Around them, guests who'd remained to watch the drama were now watching a new one unfold. She didn't care. You really mean it? Every word. I'm done letting fear dictate my choices. You taught me that. Peak stood, cupping her face in his hands. What do you say? Will you take a chance on us? Ebony kissed him instead of answering, pouring everything she felt into it: hope, fear, love, commitment. When they broke apart, she whispered, I love you too, and yes, 1,000 times yes. The church erupted in applause, the guests apparently delighted by this unexpected turn. Peak pulled Ebony against his side as Minji and her young man approached. Thank you, Minji said to both of them, for showing me that love is worth fighting for. Her father stood nearby, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he nodded, acceptance if not blessing. The groom Hyunwoo clapped Peak on the shoulder. Guess we're both free now, cousin. Guess so, Peak agreed, never taking his eyes off Ebony. As they left the church together, Ebony realized that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, Peak extricating himself from his organization, building a new life, navigating their different worlds. But for the first time in her life, she believed in a love story that didn't require her to be smaller or different or less than she was. She'd found someone who saw her, truly saw her, and loved what he saw. And that, Ebony thought as Peak laced his fingers through hers, was worth every risk. The weeks following the disrupted wedding were simultaneously the most terrifying and liberating of Ebony's life. Peak had been serious about leaving his organization, but as he'd warned, it wasn't simple. There were meetings with his lieutenants, negotiations with rival organizations, careful dismantling of power structures that had taken years to build. Through it all, Ebony stood beside him, not in the meetings themselves. Peak kept her protected from that world, but in the quiet moments after, when he'd arrive at her apartment exhausted and stressed, and she'd feed him her mother's jambalaya and listen as he talked through his decisions. You don't have to do this for me, she told him one evening as they sat on her small couch, his head in her lap while she ran her fingers through his hair. I know what I signed up for. I can handle being with you as you are. But I can't handle putting you at risk, Peak replied, his eyes closed. Every day I'm in this life is another day someone might try to use you against me. I won't lose you to my own stubbornness. Have you thought about what you'll do after, when you're out? Ebony asked. Peek's lips curved into a small smile. I've been thinking about restaurants, legitimate ones. I have capital to invest, knowledge of the industry from working with my family's establishments. It could work. It will work, Ebony said with conviction, because you're brilliant and strategic, and those skills translate to any field. He opened his eyes, gazing up at her with such tenderness it made her breath catch. How did I get so lucky to find you? I ask myself the same thing. Ebony leaned down to kiss him softly, though some people might argue that falling in love with a gangster who's trying to go straight isn't exactly lucky. Those people would be wrong. Peek sat up, pulling her into his lap. You saved me, Ebony, from a life where I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something beyond power and survival. You reminded me I'm human. Their kisses deepened, hands exploring, breath mingling. They'd been taking things slow, building a foundation of trust and emotional intimacy before adding physical intimacy to the mix. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like a turning point. Stay with me, Ebony whispered against his lips, not just tonight. Stay with me. Peek pulled back enough to search her eyes. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Ebony stood, taking his hand and leading him to her bedroom. I love you, I want you, and I'm done waiting for the perfect moment. This is our moment. What happened next was tender and passionate and perfect in its imperfection. Two people learning each other's bodies, discovering what brought pleasure, laughing when things were awkward, connecting on a level that went beyond physical. Peek touched her like she was precious, kissed every inch of her skin like he was memorizing it, whispered words in Korean she didn't understand but felt in her soul. Afterward, they lay tangled together in her bed, sweaty and satisfied and utterly content. Peek traced patterns on her shoulder, his voice soft in the darkness. I need to tell you something. Ebony tensed slightly. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just important. He shifted so he could see her face. I met with the heads of the other organizations today. We came to an agreement. I'm officially out in 2 weeks, clean break, no retaliation, no debts. Relief flooded through Ebony so strongly she felt tears prick her eyes. 2 weeks? Really? Really. And I want you with me when I tell my family. I want them to understand that you're my future, that I'm building a new life and you're the center of it. Your family might not be thrilled about you dating a black woman who used to plan your fake wedding, Ebony pointed out. My family will learn to love you the way I do, Peek said firmly, and if they don't, that's their loss. You're not negotiable, Ebony, not now, not ever. The meeting with Peek's family the following week was tense, but not hostile. His mother, an elegant woman in her 60s, studied Ebony with sharp eyes before finally nodding. You make him smile. He hasn't smiled like that since before his father died. I try, Ebony said, holding the woman's gaze. He makes me happy too. Good, then you'll both be happy together. Peek's mother switched to Korean, speaking to her son. Ebony caught the word for love and saw Peek's expression soften. She says she's glad I found someone who challenges me, he translated, and that she hopes our children have your strength and my stubbornness. Ebony choked on her tea. Children? We've been together less than 3 months. Korean mothers are optimistic, Peek said with a grin, but his eyes held a question. Though someday, if you wanted that? Children, marriage, the whole traditional path? With you? Yes. Ebony surprised herself with how quickly and confidently the answer came. Someday, when we're both ready, when you've built your new life and I've built my business. Speaking of your business, Peek pulled a folder from his briefcase. I have investors interested in your event planning company, legitimate investors, I promise. People who've seen your work on the wedding and want to help you launch. Ebony stared at the documents, her vision blurring. You did this for me? I did this for us, because your dreams matter as much as mine, because I want to be your partner, not your savior or protector. Partners build together. She kissed him right there in front of his family, not caring about propriety or tradition. This was her future. This complicated, beautiful, impossible man who saw her for exactly who she was and loved her not despite her differences, but because of them. The final confrontation came sooner than expected. Ebony was at her new office space, a small but beautiful location in a diverse neighborhood, when Suyeon burst through the door, her usual calm demeanor shattered. "We need to go now." "What's happening?" Peeks at the restaurant. There's been a challenge to his exit agreement. They're trying to force him back in. Soyeon was already pulling Ebony toward the door. "He wants you away from this, but I think you should be there. He needs to see what he's fighting for." Ebony didn't hesitate. They raced across the city to the restaurant where she'd fallen in love with Peek over Korean food and honest conversations. Inside, she found Peek facing down a group of men she recognized from wedding security footage, leaders of rival organizations. The deal was clear, one of them was saying. "You walk away, we get your territories. But you've been maintaining contacts, keeping your finger in operations." "That's not walking away. I've been ensuring a smooth transition," Peek said, his voice calm but hard, "making sure my people are taken care of." "That's not the same as staying involved. Your people should have been our concern the moment you left, unless," the man's eyes narrowed, "you're not really leaving. This is some kind of power play." "I'm leaving because I found something more important than power." Peek's gaze found Ebony in the doorway and his expression softened. "Someone who showed me what it means to actually live instead of just survive." Ebony stepped forward before Soyeon could stop her. "He's telling the truth. He's choosing a life with me over everything he built." "That's not a power play. That's love." The men turned to stare at her. She felt their assessment, their dismissal, their confusion that someone like Peek would choose someone like her. "Let them be confused." She held her head high. "Who is this?" one of the men demanded. "This is Ebony Matthews," Peek said, moving to stand beside her. "The woman I love, the woman I'm going to marry, the reason I'm leaving this life behind." He looked at Ebony with such intensity, she felt it like a physical touch. "If you don't believe me, ask anyone who was at that wedding. They saw me get on my knees in front of everyone, in a church, and choose her over everything else. That's not strategy. That's surrender to something bigger than any of us." The room fell silent. The men exchanged glances, perhaps recognizing truth when they heard it. Finally, the one who'd been speaking nodded slowly. 2 weeks, then you're out completely. No contacts, no advice, no interference." "Agreed," Peek said without hesitation. The men left, and the moment the door closed, Peek pulled Ebony into his arms. "You shouldn't have come. You needed me here." Ebony pulled back to look at him. "And I wasn't going to let you fight alone." "Not anymore. We're partners, remember? Partners." Peek's smile was brilliant. "I like the sound of that." 6 months later, Ebony stood in the doorway of her new event planning studio, Matthews and Associates Events, watching as her first major client consultation wrapped up. Through the window, she could see Peek across the street at his new restaurant, the one he'd opened with completely legitimate funding, the one that was already getting rave reviews. He caught her watching and waved, that private smile meant just for her crossing his face. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. "Dinner tonight? My place. I'm cooking." She typed back, "Only if you're making that galbi I love. Always." "And Ebony?" "I love you." "I love you too," she replied, then added, "Hurry home." Her assistant poked her head in. "Ms. Matthews? Your 6 o'clock is here." "Send them in," Ebony said, straightening her blazer, the one that fit her curves perfectly because she'd stopped apologizing for taking up space. As her new client entered, Ebony thought about how far she'd come from that woman standing at an altar, humiliated and broken. She'd found herself in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person, and built a life that was messy and complicated and absolutely, perfectly hers. That evening, over galbi and wine in Peek's apartment that had become their shared space, he took her hand across the table. "I have something to ask you." Ebony's heart stuttered. Peek pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple, elegant ring. "I know we said someday," he began, "but I've learned that someday is just another word for fear. And I'm done being afraid. Ebony Matthews, will you marry me? For real this time?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. For real this time." He slipped the ring on her finger, and as they kissed, Ebony thought about that moment in the church when he'd walked down the aisle and changed her life forever. She'd thought he was saving her that day, but the truth was simpler and more beautiful. They'd saved each other. Later, as they lay tangled together in bed, Peak traced the curve of her hip, his voice soft in the darkness. "Do you ever regret it? Taking that risk on me?" "Never," Ebony said, threading her fingers through his. "You're the best risk I ever took." They fell asleep like that, two people from different worlds who'd found a way to build a new world together, one where love wasn't about changing yourself, but about finding someone who loved you exactly as you are. And that, Ebony knew, was the truest happy ending of all. If you enjoyed this story of unexpected love and second chances, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another tale of romance that breaks all the rules. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought about Ebony and Peak's journey, and check out our playlist for more stories about finding love in the most unexpected places.